This is such a large country with so many opportunities. You have to have a why not attitude. You have to be a risk taker, and you need access to capital. And that's why the partnership with BMO is so important, because without banking support and financial support, institutional support, you're still running only one bodega.
Welcome to Markets Plus, where leading experts from across BMO discuss factors shaping the markets, economy, industry sectors, and much more. Visit bmocm.com/marketsplus for more episodes. The views expressed here are those of the participants and not those of BMO Capital Markets, its affiliates, or subsidiaries.
I'm Eduardo Tobon, head of the Economic Advisory Group and Latino segment at BMO Commercial Bank. I'm honored to introduce our next episode, arising from the Latino Leaders Index500 powered by BMO. In this episode of our Index 500 series, Jorge Ferraez, founder of Latino Leaders Magazine, is joined by Marcos Rodriguez, chairman and CEO of Palladium Equity Partners, to understand his investment philosophies, challenges, and opportunities. Let's listen in.
I have the privilege of having here Marcos Rodriguez with me. Marcos is the co-founder of Palladium Equity Partners, a very interesting, important, and relevant into the Latino community private equity firm. And Marcos and his partners have been known for many years as pioneers investing in Latino companies. So what better conversation we can have with not only a member of the list, but someone who has invested in companies that are part of this list and are now, so he's part of the making of many of these companies. So Marcos, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Jorge.
Let me take you back 25 years ago when I first met you. We were both founders of this group, very interesting group called the New America Alliance.
Yes.
And they invited me to this group because they thought at that point, the founders of the group, Henry Cisneros and Raul Izaguirre and many other great leaders, they thought that the New America Alliance, the NAA, needed like a printed arm. So they needed like a publication to be partner and to be like the publication that was the arm, the promotional arm for the organization. And then I met Marcos there, and we did one of the first events right after 9/11 in that very tall building, impressive. New York was a ghost city at that time. And I remember then Marcos and his partner at that time being interviewed, and it left a very relevant image, an inspiring image to me. So since that time, Marcos, of course, I've been following you, but I want to ask you, share with us a little bit of how your own story. How did you came, you immigrated? How did you came? What was your initial, interest, vision, dream when you got here?
Thank you very much, Jorge. And good evening, everybody. First, I want to thank our hosts at BMO, Eric, Eduardo, Alan, all of the team here. Honored to be here, and thank you for being wonderful hosts. So my story, and Jorge, a little like yours, a little like Alan and Danielle's, and I would guess many of us in this room is an immigrant story. So I was born in Cuba. My family fled Cuba in 1966, cuando yo era chiquitico y del mamey, when I was very young. Mm-hmm. And we fled from Castro's Cuba to Franco's Spain, and because that was the first country that would take us. 6 months in Madrid, and we came to the U.S. in January of 1967. And I've been to Madrid and Spain many times, but I've never been back to Cuba. My grown children and Alan and I were going through our kids and vacationing and not vacationing with our kids. My children are 33, 31, 29, and I have a about to be 16-year-old stepdaughter. And my children who are in their 30s have all been to Cuba numerous times. I've never been back. And part of the story of getting the lawnmower and buying the television My dad's family's business was in agriculture and farming. We owned land in Cuba. That skill set was not very transferable to New York City. So my dad worked as a waiter at the Plaza Hotel for his entire career. My mom worked as a pharmacist. She got a doctor of pharmacy degree from University of Havana, and then went to St. John's here in New York City, became a pharmacist. So my story is an immigrant story. I grew up in Washington Heights, here and about 140 blocks up. It's been a phenomenal adventure. I am a New Yorker above anything else since 1967. I've lived, worked, or studied in New York City, but for all but 5 years of my life. And I love the city deeply, passionate about investing in our community, our people. As Jorge said, I'm very proud. Just to give you a little bit of the story and I'll go back and forth a little bit, like that Model T, rocking back and forth in the mud, as Danielle was saying. What Palladium has been able to do, we've invested in 250 companies that we've rolled up into 41 platforms. More than half, 22 of the 41 have been Hispanic businesses. 6 of those 8 companies are on today's Index 500, the largest one being number 8, a company called Kirsch Foods. So I'm very proud. My parents are both union members. My dad was part of the Hotel Motel Workers Union. My mom was SEIU 1199. And most of the money that we manage really is from teachers, firefighters, police officers. And I am passionate about investing in Latino businesses because of my heart and soul and because of my head. My head part, to give you that first, because I'm an engineer and I went to Wharton, and it's about the money. Okay, so Latinos are the largest, fastest growing, youngest demographic that are driving the U.S. economy, 5th largest economy in the world, and we are a major economic, and as we saw in the last election, we're talking a little bit about it over there with Danielle, a political force. We happen to be terribly organized. We do a horrendous job organizing ourselves. The New America Alliance, Henry Cisneros and Raul Izaguirre's vision back then was an attempt to start. And, I'm a Cuban New Yorker, but I was embraced by California, Mexican Americans, Texans, Chicago. Martin Cabrera is a dear friend and, part of the original group going back then. And I believe that continuing to get access to capital has been the biggest stumbling block for truly catalyzing the growth of the Latino community in the U.S. And we can debate it, but I don't have a good reason as to the why. I've been asked that question, and I don't have good reasons. I have bad reasons, but I don't have a good logical reason why. But I do believe that's going to change. And Jorge, your leadership, your vision with Latino Leaders and the Index has been a phenomenal catalyst to accelerate that growth. And I'm very thankful and grateful to you for what you've done to the industry and our community. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, Marcos. But one thing, you have, for me, I'm not at all in the financial business, but for me, investors are like wizards. They have like little, crystal ball, and they see which company is going to have success and which not. But in terms of your philosophy in investing, what can you share with us about that philosophy, that vision that you have? What companies are good to invest? What companies are more risky? How do you decide on that? And then I want to go to the characteristics of the Latino-owned companies that should be like very special.
So it's a great question. I was fortunate because I'm a Catholic, I would say I was blessed to be in Rome at the Vatican during Pope Francis's funeral. I didn't go to the funeral, but I was there for Cardinal Dolan's 75th birthday. And part of the tour that we had was a tour of the Vatican Museum. And we stood in front of Raphael's School of Athens. If you guys remember your art history in the School of Athens with the great philosophers there, you had Aristotle and Socrates, I believe, are the central figures. And Aristotle is got his, I think it's his left hand down, towards the ground. And the philosophy being that it is everything that you do has to be grounded. So to answer your question, an investment has to have good CEO, good management team. You can find good management, a great business model, the great financial metrics, a tailwinds to grow the business. So the blocking and tackling that, an MBA learns. Then going back to the School of Athens, next to Aristotle is, it's Socrates or Plato, but it's Plato. Thank you. And Plato is pointing up to the heavens. And so the philosophy of Plato is that unlike Aristotle, which is grounded, we on earth have to seek the divine perfection. Plato's, thank you, the cave, the forms. So we're seeking perfection, which isn't available to us as mere mortals. But what we're looking at is the divine in all of us, which exists. So the other part of the investment world is looking for the divine or grace or a spark, una chispa, whatever you see that will make a company and a CEO succeed. So it's that combination.
Now, in terms, when you analyze Latino-owned companies, do they have something different, something that captures your attention or your interest in a different way from other companies? Have you noticed any pattern that could be interesting to just analyze or discuss?
So yes, I think the immigrant mentality is there in a very big way. The being an outsider and having something to prove is there in a very big way. And then the ability to connect with the founders or the management team or the employees because you speak their language, understand the nuances. You can argue, football, soccer versus baseball and, all the work, everything that makes us a beautiful tapestry because, Cubans and Dominicans and Puerto Ricans are different than, Mexican Americans, Colombians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, but there is a common language bond, I would say value system that you can connect with that, again, to me, going back to that tour of the Vatican speaks a little bit to the divine in all of us.
Now, what do you see as an investor in the current situation in the world? Some people said that we are in a great situation, worldwide. No major conflicts, no big economy things, like the waters are like kind of calm. But of course, investors need to have a larger vision and look beyond what common people see. As an investor, in your investor mind, what do you see coming? What do you see in the future? What opportunities, what challenges?
When I moved out of the city and moved to Connecticut, I started taking up sailing until I was probably 30. The most sailing I'd done was on the Staten Island Ferry. Mm-hmm. So, but I started learning how to sail. And there's a saying that, calm waters never make a good sailor. So rough waters make a good sailor. There's definitely rough waters, but it's always been rough waters. When we got to New York in 1967, I was just a kid, but New York City in the late 60s was scary. I went to grammar school in the South Bronx. It was scary. There were race riots, seeing cops and neighborhoods in, I saw my first race riot when I was in the third grade. That was, it's like, you go forward 50 years and some things change and progress and some things are the same. So I think it's difficult to say that things are calm. There is always turmoil, but there's always opportunity in that turmoil. We have investments in 15 companies today. Those 15 companies we've looked at, and if you look at the tariff impact on them, for example, we see about $100 million of EBITDA of risk, but there's also about $125 to $130 million of potential opportunity as businesses get insourced, as you move things around and change them. We were talking about there was a Wall Street Journal article that was saying consumer companies are seeing a decrease in revenues because of the Latino consumer. We have significant investments, large portion of it from the Hispanic community. We haven't seen a measurable impact on that. And there's always pockets of opportunities in this great, large country that we are the largest country in the world, and where people still want to come to live, and have the opportunities and take the risks that our parents did. Mm-hmm. So I see tremendous opportunity, but there is certainly significant risk. And, to go back to the sailor theme, there's certainly rough waters ahead, and you can see the storm cloud.
And now many of your companies that you have invested are in food and food production, produce. Have you seen any impact specifically on those industries?
So we have not, and those are the ones that we can measure the most readily. And we have not seen a negative impact. We have seen a significant positive impact on manufacturing businesses. The companies, we have specific healthcare investments. There are particular businesses, and I'm a micro investor. Other than the macro trends that we invest in are the mega trends of the growth in the Hispanic market, investing in founder and family businesses, mm-hmm. and doing roll-ups. But we are micro investors. What we do is, and you helped us do it, is you publish your Index 500 list. We buy companies at the bottom of the list in the 250 to 500. We move them up to the top through acquisition, and we sell them and make money. Thank you. It's very helpful. So it's not that hard. And that trend surpasses the others, and we will buy a business that's very local, let's say in Miami, and move into Texas and the Carolinas and New York, Chicago, and California. And we get tremendous synergies and able to grow them, or, differently buy company in Texas and move to Miami and up. This is such a large country with so many opportunities. You have to have a why not attitude. You have to be a risk taker, and you need access to capital. And that's why the partnership with BMO is so important, because without banking support and financial support, institutional support, you're still running only one bodega. You need that institutional support, the scale, and I'm grateful for what you've done for the industry, and grateful to BMO for what you've done, with us, and they continue to do to this day.
That's a great view of things and interpretation. Maybe we have time for a couple of quick questions. I just want to put, to the attendants, our friends here, any question that anyone wants to address to Marcos. It could be regarding his investment, or how big is his boat, or anything that you will like to ask. Is there any here? Okay.
Imitation's the sincerest form of flattery, and, having more competition come into this industry, and a lot of folks are in this industry. I hired and trained them in the business, and they're growing, which is great. And what you want to see is a legacy. There's tremendous opportunity that is unmet. And I believe, and somebody in the room can correct me, I'm doing this off memory, and I'll look at my phone. So if fact check me if I'm wrong, but if there's about $10 trillion in the hands of alternative asset managers, that sounds like a nice rough round number, $10 trillion or so. there's been studies from Harvard and Stanford that show, and depending on how generous you want to be, somewhere between 2 and 5% of that capital in the alternative asset industry is managed by Black, Latinos, or Asian Americans. That's kind of nuts. It's that there's not a good reason for that. That number needs to grow. And dear friends and admirers of Robert Smith and Jose Feliciano, if you take those guys out, the number's cut in half. We need to have more industry participants because they're going to find the spark, the soft side, the Plato, Socrates, divine side, the human side of investing. Because, banking, you know your customer, you run the numbers, but you have to know who the client is and how you work with them. And investing is the same way. And this is something that the New American Alliance, and when Jorge and I first met, a lot of that vision of Henry Cisneros and Raul Izaguirre back at the time, that is something that still needs to be done and to grow. And organizations like the New American Alliance, the NAIC, SEO have been continuing to work to change that. And the reason for it, back to Aristotle and the MBA, in addition to all the good reasons for the doing the right thing and for the divinity aspect of it, it's just good business and good economic sense and the driver of U.S. economy.
Well, Marcos, I never stop saying that you are a great example of what can be accomplished in this country, not only as an immigrant, as a Latino, and as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. So thank you for sharing these thoughts with us. And we hope you have a lot of more successes to come in your investments. And thank you for being a role model to many, many Latino and financiers and investors.
Thanks for listening. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. For more episodes, visit bmocm.com/marketsplus.
For BMO disclosures, please visit bmocm.com/podcast/disclaimer.